Hey, how you doing? This is RJ. So today I'm going to do a bit of an addition to some of my recent videos. I had done one about Mark Waid saying that he would rather see the comic industry burn down than to share it with people who don't share his opinions. Or we have the Star Wars videos that I've been doing where you have the director and Bob Iger and Kathleen Kennedy saying that they're going to triple down on their use of diversity, equity, and inclusion, even though it's been proven over the last year that that kills their movies. And so the question becomes, why? Most people in the comments are asking, why are they doing this? If they can see that it's going to lead to the destruction of their product, why? And quite honestly, it's very much linked to what Mark Waid said. And I'm going to answer that question today. However, if you want something that is not based on ideology, something that is just pure entertainment, there are 2 links in the description and the pinned comment for my 3 graphic novels. 2 of them are superhero graphic novels, both of which you can order at the Valiant Heroes Indiegogo site. And the third is a return to form for low fantasy, sword and sorcery in the vein of Conan the Barbarian. And you can order that through the Crom the Destroyer Indiegogo page. I focus on the idea of a true traditional hero, give you entertainment that's pure escapism, and some spectacular art, which you're looking at in the background. So if any of that looks or sounds appealing to you at all, click on those links in the description or the pinned comment and go on over and see if my graphic novels are for you. But back to the topic. Now, as usual, I'm not going to bury the lead in giving you the answer to the question why. I'll give you the answer to the question and then move on to some supporting evidence. But I want to answer the question by relating to you first something that I ran into over the last week. If you follow my channel, you may know that I have several university degrees. I focused on political theory and specifically the origin of ideas and tracing ideas back to where they come from, which I'll get into in a minute. And in total, I think I attended 3 different universities. And over the last week, I heard a statement from one of the universities that I went to. Now, although when I went to the university, it was fairly conservative. I know people who go there now, and it is not anymore. All students have to take a mandatory course, which focuses on, I think, the native peoples of the area in order to be sensitive to the native peoples of the area, things like that. So it is very much a quote-unquote progressive university now. But what they're doing is they're revamping all of their codes of conduct. Why? Well, because they're not progressive enough. And so they did a study of their codes of conduct that they already have to see how they could revamp them in order to make them more progressive. And the outcome of that little study was their conclusion that those old codes of conduct could simply not be revised. They had to, and I'm using their language here, burn the entire thing down and start again. Why? Well, because, of course, there is a standard at the heart of the old systems of conduct, which is a merit-based system, a knowledge-based system, and they simply cannot have that. It must be destroyed utterly. Up to this point, they have been putting addition and addition and addition onto those codes of conduct, but it is no longer viable to do so. They must destroy the very heart of those old systems so that the new heart of these codes of conduct can be progressivism itself. And that, in a nutshell, is what is going on with our entertainment right now. And it doesn't matter where it comes from. I've done videos about Disney, about Marvel and DC, about Dungeons and Dragons, about Hollywood itself. You could even include the stuff I don't touch, which is usually video games. All of them are headed in this direction. All of them are doubling down on the direction that they're going in with diversity, equity, and inclusion, even though they know it doesn't sell. Why? Because destruction is the end goal. Why? Because the old system, they can't build on that old system anymore. They have used those old systems to the greatest extent that they can. Now it's time to destroy them utterly so that they can build anew. And so when authors like Mark Waid, the author of highly acclaimed graphic novels like Kingdom Come, when he says, and I'm quoting him, "I think a lot of us would just rather see the industry burn down than, quote, get together with the alt-right. I know I would. Sorry." When he says that, he's not just expressing the fact that he will not, absolutely will not, consider in any way working with people that don't agree with him. He's also expressing another idea. And the other idea is the fact that the end point was always destruction. The reason why his go-to is burn the entire thing down is because their intent from the beginning was to burn the entire thing down. It's simply that they've had to, because of backlash, push up their time schedule too much earlier than they expected to have to burn the thing down. Now, before I get into the statements from Disney, some I have covered already and some that are new, to support what I have just said, and from there go on to look at what this entire burning things down and starting anew looks like, before I do that, let's look at the ideas behind where all of this comes from. Why do so many people in the entertainment industry have this mentality of let's burn it down and start anew? Why? Well, because they're a product of the self-same university system, or systems that are very much like it, which I just described. Very quote-unquote progressive systems. And the thing is about these quote-unquote progressive systems, they've been around for a long time. They used to be just the outliers. Then they became, by the time I was in university, about half of the universities. Today, they're the majority of the universities, and the majority of the people that are running the universities, and the majority of the professors, and the majority of the ideas that are expressed there. And the majority of those ideas that come from progressivism, actually every last single idea that comes from progressivism, is based upon one single point. One single section of thought, and that single section of thought is critical theory. And it has metastasized and grown and developed into things like Black Lives Matter, or anti-racism, or diversity, equity, and inclusion, or any of the other progressive buzzwords that you hear today. They're all ideas that can be traced back to the origin of critical theory. Now, different sections of critical theory, some of them are critical race theory, some of them are critical gender theory, some of them, like intersectionality, is a mix of a whole bunch of different kinds of critical theory, but they all trace their origin back to critical theory. And critical theory, at its heart, was given a very specific mandate when it was created, most notably by the Frankfurt School back in the 60s, because what you had at that point, at the creation of critical theory, was a bunch of intellectuals who were all avowed Marxist, who said, the grand worker revolution that Marx envisioned has not come to pass. We cannot depend upon that anymore. We have to come up with a new way of igniting the grand global Marxist revolution, and we will do that through what? Through critical theory. That's what critical theory was created specifically for. And again, this is not some kind of a conspiracy theory. This is pure history. Go back and look up the Frankfurt School. It's laid out there right in front of you. And the point, very briefly, of critical theory is to use criticism only in a negative way, never constructively, never in a positive way, so that you criticize something slowly and surely, continually, until that thing you criticize eventually fails and is destroyed, and then it can be replaced by a new system that has Marxism at its core. And once enough systems have been replaced like this, then the entire system of the world will be replaced like this. Now, am I saying that Bob Iger and Kathleen Kennedy and so many other people that are in the entertainment system, like Mark Waid, are a bunch of communists or a bunch of avowed Marxists who want to bring about the grand communist revolution? No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that some of them might not be. I don't know. The point is that these people don't need to be that in any way, because they were brought up in an education system where that idea of critical theory was the only system that you could bring everything back to. And so their thinking is, at its heart, revolving around ideas of critical theory. Most of them don't even know it, of course, because the ideas of critical theory are ideological in nature. They're not philosophical. Certainly not philosophical in the original definition of the term as a love of wisdom, because it's not wisdom, nor is it a logical extension of philosophy like philosophy originally was supposed to be. No, it's an ideology. And ideology doesn't have a base in reality. And that's easily seen because this is all based on Marxist theory, which is a utopian theory. A utopian theory cannot have a basis in reality that we already know from the past. Why? Because if it built a utopia at one point, it would still exist today, because utopia would be perfect. But we don't have a utopia today. Therefore, it never occurred in the past. Therefore, there is no way to base it on things that have already occurred. Therefore, they have to project it into the future and just say, believe that this is going to happen. And that is why it is an ideology. It is based upon a belief that's not based in reality. You can only go so far back within tracing it backwards through ideas, and then you hit a point where you have to stop and just believe what someone has said. And even if you want to go back beyond that, there is no going back beyond that, because it doesn't tie itself to reality. It ties itself to a statement of authority by someone who is simply making a statement. And since the entire thing is based upon this pie in the sky utopian idea, it is an ideology, and since it's an ideology, it must ingrain itself in people's minds through being a controlling factor of what and how they think. And since these people were brought up in systems of education which were controlled by critical theory, their mindset was controlled and is trained to think in this way. That's why they think in this way. So again, most of them probably have absolutely no clue that their minds go in this direction. In mental geography, it would be called an unknown unknown, because they don't know that they don't know it. That is to say, they don't know that their ideas are limited to this way and this way only of thinking. But they are. They're limited to a way of thinking which draws its ideas back to, we have to burn down the system that now exists and build something completely new, because that's how you actually, quote unquote, create. That's how you, quote unquote, progress. That's how you move into the future. Now, I'm sure after my little spiel there, many people have already clicked off of this video and are no longer listening. But if you think I'm a madman for what I have just said and are still listening at this point, let me give you one of the new quotes from Bob Iger when he is trying to defend the new Star Wars movie that's supposed to be coming out in 2026 after all the backlash about what the director is saying and how they're going to make it a diversity, equity, and inclusion centered film, all that kind of stuff. Bob Iger has come out in the last week, I think it was, and said the following: "We plan to evolve our Star Wars brand. We have come to the realization that a minority of our customers hold different opinions on what our approach to expand the galaxy far, far away with diversity, equity, and inclusion as our number one priority to change the value of the Star Wars brand that we hope will attract newcomers and new customers around the globe. We ask everyone to remain open-minded with our approach to changing our strategy with our first Star Wars film, and that this does not come from any kind of an agenda-driven strategy, nor do we promote or insert ourselves into any situation that would be labeled as a culture war. That is not what Disney is about, and never will be about. Our usage of DEI, that is to say, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and our latest Star Wars feature will allow us to connect with a wider audience and different cultures around the world to make this our most successful Star Wars film yet. After carefully reviewing any kind of doubts about this project that we have obtained, that we are dealing with nothing more than a minority of our customers that choose to withdraw from engaging in this production for the next couple of years. I cannot stress this enough when it involves our new approach to our Star Wars film slate, that we do not promote or provoke any kind of a culture war with our entertainment, especially entertainment that is geared for younger audiences." So that's the end of Bob Iger's recent statement. Let me give you another short quote from Kathleen Kennedy over the last 2 weeks about the exact same thing. She says the following: "The entire slate, both for films and television, should properly move on from both the Skywalker legacy and George Lucas's vision so that we can create something new from the ground up, without holding on to any kind of a burden of the past films that George brought into this world. This is about disconnecting from characters that have been widely recognized in pop culture and our push to providing this importance of Rey by creating a new generation for a new generation of moviegoers for everything Star Wars. And let's just back that up with the statements a couple of weeks ago by the director of this new film, Shamin Obaid Chinoy, that I covered a couple of weeks ago. An interviewer basically lied to her and said, Miss Marvel, because, by the way, she also directed a couple of episodes of the Miss Marvel show, and they were talking about it at that time. So the interviewer says, Miss Marvel, when it was launched as a comic, got a lot of people to, and I quote, walk into a comic book shop for the very first time just to get this comic, just to be introduced to this character. And I've shown in previous videos that, yeah, that just wasn't true. And even if it was, they certainly did not keep that audience because the sales numbers for that book continually faltered and they had to reboot it. But the director takes that idea and magnifies it 100-fold. She doesn't just say a lot of people. She says, I think that Miss Marvel is bringing in millions of people who are getting introduced to the MCU because of Kamala, which is Miss Marvel. And I think that that is very special for Disney and Marvel to introduce the character that brings fans into the fandom. And just something funny here, I'm going to give you the last quote in a minute, but I had to search for it in my notes. And I searched it by looking up the word really because I know she said that word. Do you know how many times this woman uses the word really? She uses it over and over and over again. Why? Well, in my mind, it's because what she's trying to push is not real. So just repeat that over and over again. Anyway, the last quote from her that I'm going to give is where she is talking about, once again, as she says, the evolution of this Star Wars universe. And talking about what real fans are, she says, I am not surprised by any level of pushback from a certain demographic that may feel frightened about how we are changing who is making and starring in these films. But I think it's an exciting move by Kathleen Kennedy and what Bob is allowed to do to really lead the woman in charge of a galaxy far, far away. It's pretty damn exciting to be working on this as a director, and I think to all the naysayers about our direction with expanding the adventures of Rey, really need to keep quiet and tighten those lips because harsh words only spoil the fun for others. I think that's the one obstacle that we deal with in this community, is that there are many fans who feel Star Wars belongs to them, but it really belongs to the creator and their vision and what they are able to deliver to the audience, and if it's accepted or denied universally, well, then we'll deal with that. Okay, so to connect all of that, let's go over very briefly what this new Star Wars film is about, what the plot is supposed to do, and how it is supposed to, in their words, evolve the Star Wars universe. Well, it is set about 10 years after the last movie, and Rey, the central character, is supposed to become the new Jedi Master. She's going to create a new Jedi Order, and she will train these other new characters, new Jedi, about how to be Jedis. And then, again, create this new Jedi Order. So firstly, when you see that she, the director, and Kathleen Kennedy and Bob Iger and all these other people are saying, we're finally going to have a female-led Star Wars, the people are scratching their head going, we already had that for quite some time. Well, not in the way that these people want. That's the point. They think they're speaking the truth because they're looking at all the other female-led stuff that has occurred so far and saying it was just an attachment to that old story of George Lucas, which we now have to get rid of. This is becoming now a completely new story. How? Well, we already phased out the old characters with the last set of movies. Now we're going to take the new characters that we created, phase them out into an entirely new section of characters, which are the new Jedi. And then with this basis, by the way, of a matriarchal, female-led Jedi Order, which is going to lead this entire far, far away universe, it will be the new beginning that they are looking for. It will be the completion of burning everything down that has come story-wise before and creating anew. And they make no bones about it. Each the director, Bob Iger and Kathleen Kennedy, make that statement exactly. Kathleen Kennedy being the most clear, saying, and I quote, we need to move on from both the Skywalker legacy and George's vision so that we can create something new from the ground up, without holding on to any kind of a burden of the past films that George brought into this world. This is, burn it all down and start anew. They had to work up to burning it all down and starting anew, but this is now their inflection point. This is now when they go in a completely new direction with quote-unquote progressivism as the central core, the heart of everything that they do. Not just as an addition to those old properties, but the core of moving forward. And how and why do they think they can do this? Well, again, just as the director said, they think that they're going to bring in millions of new people, millions of new fans. As Bob Iger and Kathleen Kennedy both said, this is a new Star Wars for a new fandom that is global in nature. And by the way, this is not something new that I'm talking about, because the director, Charmin, whatever her last name is, she directed Ms. Marvel, which was created by Sana Amanat, who ran Marvel Comics for about 10 years, and I covered that for the last half a dozen years in statements from her, and she clearly states that when she was brought on to Marvel, the person who asked her to come work for them said, "We want you to create an entirely new way of making comics and an entire new fan base." And that was in 2009. And the director of this new Star Wars, who also directed Ms. Marvel, who worked closely with Sana Amanat, has the exact same mentality. Because the mentality for Marvel Comics for those last 15 years now was, there is this expansive new fandom out there that just agrees with everything, quote unquote, progressive. We just need to connect with them. I've been saying that in videos for the last 6 years, saying, where does this delusional idea come from? They seem to, in the back of their minds, with their statements that I went over and over again, think that, yes, that audience is out there. We just haven't connected to them yet. And then when we do, all of this, quote unquote, progressive entertainment will sell like hotcakes. So the end point to the answer of the question why is because they believe that there is this phantom audience out there, this phantom new fandom, this international fandom that will completely replace the existing fandom as it now is. And what does that look like? Well, that looks like what the new director of Star Wars, said was a real fan. She says that these people who believe that they own the property, which is to say they believe they can dictate what actually comes out in the new product because they insist on sticking to the continuity of the old product, well, they're not real fans, because the real fans need to trust the creator, i.e. her, with the product so that they can take it in an entirely new direction. And, oh, by the way, support it when it does come out. Only new fans, only real fans will support that entire thing. That is the new fandom. And that's really the point of this entire thing. The old fandom is what needs to die. The old fandom is what needs to be burned down. They can burn down the story and start anew all they want. But if those products don't make money, and again, yes, I understand the whole connection to venture capital and ESG scores and things like that. But if those products don't make money at the end of the day, they have a problem. They have a real problem. So they need to concentrate on a new fandom. Why? Well, because the old fandom doesn't agree with this quote-unquote progressive nonsense. Even if they are progressive people, a lot of them are saying, well, we need continuity. At the very least, I'm sorry, no, continuity is part of the old system. Why? Because continuity would tie it back to the original stories of George Lucas, which don't have progressivism at its heart. Therefore, they must be obliterated. Therefore, anyone who thinks that way must be gotten rid of. Therefore, in order to move forward, they need an entire new fan base, which is what they're trying to do, and the mentality behind burn it all down and start anew. So, if I've given you anything new to think about, hit like, hit the shield in the lower right-hand corner of your screen to subscribe, and leave me a comment. Tell me what you think about all this. And don't forget, there are 2 links in the description and on the top comment for my 3 graphic novels, pure entertainment and fun in the vein of superheroes and fantasy. So if any of that looks or sounds appealing to you at all, click on those links in the description and go on over and order yourself a copy of one of my graphic novels today. All right, I'll leave it there. I'll see you later. Bye.